Calaroga Shark Media.
Hello and welcome to Palace Intrigue. I am your host, Mark Francis. King Charles had quite the unexpected encounter during his visit to Canberra when he crossed paths with an alpaca named Hephner. The 9-year-old alpaca, dressed to impress in a suit, bow tie and a gold crown, stood out in the crowd of over 1,000 well-wishers at the Australian War Memorial. Hephner, who was named after Playboy founder Hugh Hefner, had waited patiently alongside his owner, Robert Fletcher, to meet the royal couple. One king meets another king, Fletcher joked to reporters. As Charles approached and went to pat the fluffy royal guest, Hephner sneezed on him, much to the surprise of both the king and the crowd. Charles laughed it off and Fletcher quickly quipped, "At least he didn't spit." Charles and Camilla brought a touch of royal charm to a community barbecue in scorching temperatures at Parramatta Park in Sydney. Welcomed by a smoking ceremony and didgeridoo performance, the royals reunited after separate engagements earlier in the day. King Charles met with New South Wales Premier Chris Minns and his wife Anna, while Queen Camilla was introduced to the Deputy Premier Prudence Carr and her husband Brad Hulls. As part of the smoking ceremony, both Charles and Camilla took turns wafting the smoke over themselves, a gesture believed to bring good luck and clear away bad spirits. One of the day's heartwarming moments occurred when King Charles embraced a member of Australia's stolen generation. Later, the royal couple were given tongs to flip sausages on the barbecue. Charles, ever the enthusiastic participant, grabbed the tongs and immediately started turning over the snags, the sausages, while Camilla preferred rolling them with a tool. Surf life-saving personnel who were manning the barbecue presented Charles with a framed red and yellow swimming cap, to which the king quipped, "Break glass in an emergency." Scott McCoy, who goes by the name Chop, is the manager of Black Bear Barbecue Restaurant in Sydney. Chop found it to be an honour to have some royal helpers. Chop said, "I'm still shaking. It was great." The king and queen declined a chance to taste any of the sausages, which included lamb, beef, pork, and vegetarian variations. Chop said the queen was instructed to use the tongs the Aussie way, to turn the snags by clicking them twice before she used them. Queen Camilla caught the crowd's attention when she was presented with a nature crown made from leaves, flowers, and natural materials. She placed it on her head, saying to Charles, "Look what I've got," to which he replied, "Oh, it's beautiful," noticing the herb rosemary woven into it. As they mingled with the crowd, Camilla chatted with school captains Rohan and Lucas from Bayanami Public School, who encouraged the royals to enjoy some sausages. Charles was presented with a bouquet by Layla, 11, who later giggled as she recalled him telling her, "It's a good excuse to skip school, eh?" The royals also watched a sheepdog trial where Colt, an Australian Kelpie, took a few attempts to herd the cattle correctly. After a few comical minutes, the sheep were finally secured in their pen and Charles laughed, saying, "That was brilliant." As the day wrapped up, the Sydney Thunder cricket team presented the king with their First Nations jersey. Player Chris Grant later said, "It was pretty special to meet the king personally, and it's amazing to see the turnout today." King Charles and Queen Camilla joined Premier Minns on stage to offer brief remarks. Charles made light of the hourglass he presented to New South Wales Parliament earlier, joking, "I knew I should have brought the egg timer with me to check I didn't go on too long." It's one thing to be an Australian Republican, it's another to be rude. In the Telegraph, Camilla Tominey writes, "As a realist rather than a royalist, I have always believed those opposed to the monarchy should be able to air their views as freely as those in favour of the Crown, country and Commonwealth. But do Republicans have to be quite so rude about it? Never has the bolshiness of the anti-monarchy movement been better demonstrated than in Australia, where state premiers have refused to attend a welcome reception for the king in the capital, Canberra, despite him having flown halfway around the world at the age of 75 to fulfil his constitutional obligations as King of Australia. He didn't need to make the pit stop en route to Samoa to attend next week's Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting with Queen Camilla, but having recently undergone cancer treatment, presumably thought it would be remiss not to pop in, it's highly doubtful the royal couple will ever return, yet still the politicians found better things to do than spare an hour or two to greet them over a warm white wine. Daniela Ralph, writing for the BBC, considers the Australia trip a success. Ralph writes, "For Buckingham Palace, this was the ideal ending to the royal tour of Australia. The optics were positive, despite a headline-grabbing protest in Canberra on Monday. The public mood on the ground in Sydney was supportive. But getting to this point with a successful completion of this trip ahead of a poignant goodbye will have come as a huge relief to royal aides. These trips are a quick-fire round of very diverse events, with the crowds at each demanding attention, and the King appears to have coped well. His presence here in Australia immediately focuses minds on the King's role as head of state and reopens questions about whether that is right for modern Australia. Although Republican sentiment bubbles under the surface here, except for the heckling in Parliament, it has not burst through in any significant way on this trip. An Indigenous protester was arrested for attempting to confront King Charles. Wayne Coco Wharton said, "Go home with the King. He is a king of thieves and a king of liars. You have no receipt. You have no agreement on the occupation of this country. You are a nation of thieves. You're guilty." Wharton was arrested by police, a development that was met with applause. Palace Intrigue will be right back. Royal expert Jenny Bond is defending Prince William. Last year, William launched Homewards, a program which champions the idea that homelessness can be eradicated by ensuring it's rare, brief and unrepeated. Some are sceptical about William's involvement. Jenny Bond tells OK, "I utterly despair of the people who attack someone for trying to do good. What do they expect William to do? Sit in a palace, twiddling his thumbs and ringing a bell for servants? He knows perfectly well that he was born into a position of enormous privilege and wealth and several homes. But, as he says, what is the point of his existence if he doesn't use that privilege and that platform to try to do what he can to help others? He is coming up with innovative ideas, which may go some of the way to helping the homeless. If the project doesn't provide a complete solution, and let's face it, he's not going to wipe out homelessness in a few years, he can at least say he has tried his best and used his considerable convening power as fully as possible. And there you have it. If you'd like to email us, our address is thepalaceintrigue@gmail.com. Please follow us on Spotify, Apple, the app of your choice, and write us a review, leave some stars if you're enjoying the show. Don't forget we have merch available and subscriptions. And don't forget to check out our other series, Ghost Scary Stories, leading up to Halloween. There's hundreds of episodes available now, and you can get that show wherever you get this podcast, Ghost Scary Stories. I'm Mark Francis. My thanks to John McDermott. This is Palace Intrigue, and good times.